What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Okay, let's do a little mailbag. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs. Get your questions answered right here on the podcast. We will start with Matt. All this talk about the tush push brings me back to Brady and the quarterback sneak. We hear how the Eagles and Hurts are uniquely built for this play. But how was a quarterback so automatic like Brady? He isn't uniquely strong, fast, or tall. Brady's 6, huge, but I hear what you're saying. Maybe the better question is, why do other quarterbacks, why are they so bad at it? I saw Vrabel came into my YouTube algorithm. He was on like one of the local shows on Boston radio, the Sports Hub or whatever, 98.5. And I watched his interview, and he mentioned that one thing that Tom was so good at is like he could hit like 3 or 4 gaps. You know, he would see wherever you weren't, and he would attack that gap. Like the tush push is the same every time, right? They are just shoving you forward, and he's going. I think it's fair to say, I mean, I've never broken it down on the all 22, but just in a vertical straight line forward. Maybe he moves a little bit left or right, but it's a push forward. Tom, like Josh Allen tried to do in the AFC Championship game, is like picking lanes. And historically, that's kind of what you did. Like if a dude was shaded over the center and shaded over the right guard, and you had a little angle to the left guard, you would fire to the left side or vice versa. I don't know. I mean, Tom was just elite at it. Some people just have certain skills and are comfortable doing it. Maybe there's a push off element. Tom is tall. I mean, Tom is 6'5". So I think some people, Mahomes, I mean, they just don't even run it. So I don't have a great answer for you beside like, I do think the reason people don't just 100% copy the tush push, like if I have Jared Goff or Patrick Mahomes or some of these quarterbacks who like Jared Goff is not, you're not going to want to put him like that low. One, he's tall as well, but like he might be liable to get hurt. You know, part of what makes Jalen unique is kind of his body type. He's like he's a little bigger version of like Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson in his heyday would have been good at the tush push, I would guess. So it's harder for Peyton Manning or Phillip Rivers to get that low. It's crazy how big of a topic the tush push has become. And I'll keep saying this. The torpedo bats, someone hit me like, Judge isn't using them. Like, listen, I enjoy the Yankees. I'm not anti the Yankees. I'm entertained. Honestly, like 2 baseball teams I kind of loosely follow are the Yankees and Dodgers, just because you just want to see the best teams. But I guess he's not using the torpedo bat. But the dude on Cincinnati used a torpedo bat on Monday night, had like 7 RBIs and went 4 for 5. I'm pro the torpedo bat. I'm not anti the torpedo bat. But yeah, I don't even know why I brought the torpedo bat. But question for the bag. The NCAA is so opposed to having student athletes be employees, even though every university employs students for several non-athletic campus functions. Why doesn't the NCAA allow college athletes to be employees of the university with contracts that stipulate classroom attendance and other specific terms? Is it simply because the NCAA doesn't want universities to provide health insurance and other benefits? Seems like most of the NIL sketchiness we're seeing is because there are no rules. But in my opinion, having contracts would solve the vast majority of the issues. I don't pretend to be like a NCAA revenue share, like a master on this topic. But health insurance, if I shatter my leg playing for Wisconsin or playing for UCLA or whatever, ruin my shoulder, ruin my elbow, I get surgery on their dime. So the program insures me. Let's assume like I don't even have parents. My grandparents raised me, and they don't have health insurance either. The school covers me as a collegiate athlete. I think their issue, the school's issue, like the Title IX thing is kind of the elephant in the room. You couldn't just employ the football players and not employ the soccer players and the softball players. I mean, it's just it becomes this weird situation of legalities, which again, like I don't feel that comfortable talking about, but I know they exist. I saw them at Fresno State. The softball coach when I was there in 2008 and 2009 had sued the school and was one of, if not the highest paid softball coaches in the country at the time. She was making like 400 grand, like '08, because she had sued the school for Title IX violations. The basketball coach, Stacy Johnson Klein, who's a good looking woman, uh, she actually had been fired, had sued the school because she claimed like the AD had like touched her in a car wash and had got like $10+ million. So the Title IX situation can be very financially limiting if you screw something up. Like you can be forced to pay a lot of money uh, in situations that you don't that don't like the softball coach making 400 grand at Fresno State in 2009. I mean, that's insane. But like Title IX, she got it. The Stacey Johnson Klein, the basketball coach, there were a lot of different opinions on what actually happened. But what did happen is she won a lawsuit for a lot of money. You said to go another time. I love football and golf, but my question is Matt Ryan a Hall of Fame quarterback? I think anyone who says no is crazy. Pro Football Focus agrees if you look at their Hall of Fame rating. But here's why. And then he just rattles off. MVP award. Has one MVP award equal to Elway, Marino, and Terry Bradshaw. First team All Pro selection, achieved in 16. Surpassed legends like Elway, Aikman, and Warren Moon. Career passer rating, higher than Favre, Montana, Roethlisberger, Warner, and Aikman. Touchdown to interception ratio, it just rattles off. When I close my eyes and I think Matt Ryan, do I think Hall of Fame? And again, my standards are really high. Like when I think Hall of Fame, I think Aikman, excuse me, you mentioned Aikman. He's not the first guy that comes to mind. Brady, Manning, Rodgers, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Adrian Peterson, like the greatest players of all time. Trent Williams, LaDainian Tomlinson, like just Deion Sanders, Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice. Like those are the type guys I think about. And maybe I have too high of a of kind of like my threshold is way higher than some. Matt Ryan is a phenomenal player. And like he falls under Cam Newton's 1 year was more of an outlier relative to most of his career. But I do think Matt Ryan and Cam Newton both like they had this remarkable MVP season and they led a team to a Super Bowl and then they lost. I do think if they had won the Super Bowl, like won the MVP and then won the Super Bowl, it's like you do stuff like that, it's like, yeah, Hall of Famer. I think when you lose that game, fair or not, it can kind of rattle your candidacy. It's hard to do Pro Bowls and yeah, he played, in an era with in the NFC, Rodgers, really his entire time, and Breeze, and then Russell Wilson. So I I just have high standards. I'm not anti Matt Ryan, and I respect Matt Ryan's game, but my first reaction is no. But I think the same for a lot of players in his era. Philip Rivers, Eli's tough because he did have those 2 seasons, and I just use the example. But Eli wasn't winning the MVP. To me, if Eli had an MVP, it'd be a no-brainer. But I understand the arguments on both sides. Longtime Coffee member. Everyone says that Josh Allen is an all-time talent. No argument. People also claim that Daboll is the one who fixed Josh. What are the chances the majority of people are incorrect in their assessment of Brian Daboll? I'm not saying he's necessarily a bad coach, but it seems to me that he got more good coach credits transferred from working with an all-time talent in Josh Allen than the bad coach credits for sucking consistently with the Giants. Josh likely would have figured it out. It just happened to be with Daboll. And the year Daboll went to the playoffs, DJ had 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and 7 rushing touchdowns. Not exactly killing it. I do understand that he maximized Daniel Jones, but I can't help but think Allen saved Daboll, and not sure the other way around. I think the reason he gets a lot of credit with Josh Allen is because when the Bills drafted Josh Allen, it was an extremely controversial pick. He was not very good in college. Now, granted, he played at Wyoming, and his last year there, they had lost a bunch of skill guys, so his team wasn't as good. But coming out of college, he was his 2 seasons starting at Wyoming, 56%, 56%. He had a pretty solid 2016 season with 28 touchdowns, but he threw 15 interceptions. And then his senior year, he threw 16 touchdowns. So I just think it's not, it looked like he got a project. And this is the best part or the most fascinating part about arguing this stuff. We'll never know. Like, is Patrick Mahomes, if some random if Todd Bowles gets him, I don't, Robert Saleh gets him, I don't know. I think it's fair to say he would not have rattled off all the Super Bowls, but does he win a Super Bowl? Would Josh Allen been great no matter where he goes? I don't know the answer to that. Could you make the argument that Josh Allen made Brian Daboll? 100%. Because I saw Brian Daboll coach a lot of offenses before he got to Buffalo, and it was not pretty. Now, maybe he learned in his one stint from Saban, but I don't have a great answer for you beside, like, I don't know. One thing's clear. Josh Allen is now a dominant player, and anyone who coaches him is going to get a lot of credit. But Brian Daboll is, I think he was asked today on Tuesday that if he'll call plays, and he still didn't have an answer. He's just, the Giants situation has just been weird. It really has. Huge Charger fan. A lot of people talk about the Chargers need weapons. While I agree, I look at the new regime as building through their identity. Build inside out. I see you say Jim was never going to pay $30 million for a receiver. My question is, what is your viewpoint on the value of weapon pieces after the interior is built? Can a lesser of talented player be evaluated to a superstar level with strong foundation built first? The most popular example is the Lions. Well, I do believe that, like, when you build a great offensive line, if you hit on a solid running back, he's going to look way better. I would imagine Najee Harris has a good season. I would guess they draft a running back with their first 3 or 4 picks. I'd be a little shocked if that guy's not good. So it's much easier to be a running back behind a good offensive line than a bad one. Look at Saquon. But I would say that, you know, part of having great wide receivers is, like, if you don't throw it all the time, who really cares? Like, Jim Harbaugh wants to run the ball. He wants to run the ball, slow down the game, and play defense. It's what he's been doing for 15 plus years at Stanford, 49ers, and Michigan. So, like, having DK Metcalf and allocating that much money to one player feels like a misuse of funds and misuse of resources. That's why he doesn't usually do it. Like, to me, the Chargers need tight end, running back. The finals for March Mania are here, and the only thing for sure is it's the last time you can bet on college basketball this season. Get in on all the action, expected and unexpected, with DraftKings Sportsbook. With live betting, exclusive content, promos, and parlays, DraftKings is the ultimate college basketball destination for March. First time, here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get 150 bonus bets instantly. Bet the unexpected with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get 150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Question for the mailbag. What are your thoughts on Schrager leaving the NFL Network? Are you friends? I wouldn't call him a friend, but I know him. I think the NFL Network is just not going to exist. I don't know when or how or when you turn on television, it won't be there or it'll be morphed into ESPN. But the NFL Network that we knew a decade ago or 5 years ago is not going to exist over the next 3 or 4 years. They have been trying to sell it forever. So I think Schrager is very, very tied in with the NFL. In terms of coaches and just he's good. He's entertaining. I enjoy him. Uh, got off a sinking ship. Like the NFL Network is just not going to be around over the next several years. I don't know when, but as we know it, it's really just not going to be near the same. And he's a New York guy. They moved Good Morning Football to L.A. I think Jason McCourty, who was part of that show, or Devin, one of the two, I think it was Jason, like refused to go. She's like, no. I think Kyle Brandt's really talented, kind of in a tough spot. I don't know. I mean, it's just you're part of these shows, and you're one of the talents. Well, this is the thing of like quote unquote legacy old school media. You're if they want to move studios to a different state, what are you going to do? It's in the podcast business. You can't just do it from your house, even though he kind of did at times. But I mean, it was clear that that show is coming down the home stretch. I don't watch it, but it gets good reviews. People enjoy it. It's just an easy show to consume when I have seen it. How much stock do you put in cold weather NFL teams, Bills, Pats, Packers, etc.? Put into players that came from cold weather schools? It's a good question. I uh, I think it matters at quarterback. If you take a guy to New England or you take a guy to Philly and they don't have a strong arm and don't function well in inclement weather or New York or Pittsburgh, it's going to be difficult. It is dramatically easier to play your home games in Los Angeles or San Francisco or a dome than it is in freezing cold conditions. Can you imagine playing Kansas City home games in December? It's going to be hard to have a weak arm. Now, Alex Smith, like they could kind of manage it, but it was difficult and they had limitations. Uh, I think when it comes to other positions, like tough guys translate. Like if you're a tough physical linebacker and you played at USC or Texas, you're going to be okay, right? Same with guards and D tackles and corners. That's where the scouting aspect of your football character, of your personality come into play. Like it's not anyone's fault you play at Alabama. A lot of guys from Alabama have gone on to cold weather cities and been just fine. Or Georgia or Florida. I think it's much more difficult for quarterbacks, especially arm strength. If you play like it's hard to play in Chicago if you have a weak arm. Part of the reason they love Caleb, he has a hose. It gets fucking windy and cold there. You're not going to be throwing 80 miles an hour in Excel. You got to have a fastball. I mean, look at the Packers. There's a reason their last three quarterbacks, big arms. You need it. Josh Allen, Baltimore or Buffalo, freezing cold, inclement weather. Lamar has a pretty good arm. So I think it's more personality for most positions. Receivers, if you get a little bit of a diva, but again, like Deshaun Jackson was from LA, played at Cal, and went to Philly and was just fine. I think for most positions, it's a pretty easy transition. Plus, your body, I've been living in Arizona for a while. The Bay Area is just much colder. People say California, great weather. The Bay Area does not have great weather. They talk about Northern California like it's Southern California. It is not. San Francisco's freezing cold. I think Mark Twain said the coldest day of the year is a summer in San Francisco, summer night in San Francisco. Like it's a cold place. So like you kind of adapt to your surroundings. Since I've been here, like it's 60 degrees or under, I get really cold. Not that I ever truly embraced it, but when you live in Philly, you kind of get a little more used to the cold. But if you have small hands, you have a weak arm, I don't care how mentally and physically tough you are, they're just limitations. Lifelong Bears fan. I know you've gotten a lot of mailbag questions about Caleb, but here's one more. I completely agree with your outlook on him. Next year will be a big tell about his future. Last year was tough to judge him and how he'll be as an NFL quarterback because of the lack of the team's competitiveness and maybe the worst coaching staff of all time. I've seen a few worse, but it's bad. I've heard you say he was getting all his stats in the second half of games that were already over. It's definitely true, but on multiple occasions during one score games against the Commanders, the Packers, and the Vikings, forced overtime, and the Thanksgiving game against the Lions, he was able to drive the ball down the field in the fourth quarter and fell short due to his team or coaching staff letting him down. Can we start being fair when talking about the guy who has shown flashes of a late game clutch gene? I don't think anyone's shitting on him. I'm just the guy presented his stats of his touchdowns and his yards, and I just said a lot of those were accumulated down a lot of scores. I mean, that Lions game when Eberflus fucked them by not calling the timeout. I forget the exact score, but I mean, wasn't it like 24 nothing at half, 28 nothing? I mean, it was a blowout. So I think when you're in those moments, you get to accumulate a lot of stats because the other team loses focus. Especially by then, everyone viewed the Bears as terrible. Now, I'm with you. Once the game becomes tight, you either got to make the plays or you don't. And he made a lot of plays. I'm not acting like Caleb's some scrub. No one's saying that. It's just we'll see what it looks like. I don't know the answer. I would. Not all these guys are going to hit, and who knows? From year to year, like we saw C.J. Stroud, it looked like he was a top five quarterback. Then he had a bad second year. So things change really quickly. All of a sudden, Caleb can become a star. I don't know. Everyone, as the kids say, loved glazing Ben Johnson. We'll see how he is as a head coach. I don't know. Everyone thought Dan Campbell was going to be Jim Tom Sula, and it's like Dan Campbell's one of the best coaches in the league right now. Been listening to pods since my brother, who's a fanatic fan, sent it to me mid-season. I love your takes. I'm in the process of building a team for a company to launch a new product. Some days I feel like a GM, trying to bring in all types internal, external, outside the box thinkers. My non negotiable qualities I look for in each person are vision, consistency, and humility. They can all show in different ways, and they don't have to be strong in all, but need to show potential. If you are picking a team for business, what are some non negotiable qualities you would look for in each individual team member? Obviously, there are certain industries, like you can't make the NFL without meeting certain requirements. Like, there is no mere use in the NFL. You can't just show up like, I'm going to make the NFL, right? So you need to have size, physical characteristics. You have to have played football in college. Jordan Mailata withstanding, like, and even he was like probably one of the great rugby players in Australia. You can't just normal people can't play. Same thing with basketball, same thing with baseball. You have to possess certain skills. So not knowing your industry, there are certain like you can't just be an architect without a background in it, right? You can do what I'm doing just with a big personality, I guess. Even if you didn't have a background working in sports or journalism, you could just be a commentator or a broadcaster. You could learn that vocation. You can't just show up and just like learn how to become a doctor without the schooling, right? So not knowing your industry, clearly there might be a box you have to check to understand if I need an engineer or a coder, no matter how bad I want it, I would never be able to figure out how to code. It's just not in my wheelhouse. So if you're looking for younger people, I would say in my experience in football and now We bring Jackson on in the fall, and I want to develop a bigger role for him here. I like young, hungry people, and you can just sense their energy. Uh, I once upon a time, 20 plus years ago, was as hungry and ambitious as like any young kid that just wants an in. I value, I would say, hunger, willingness to do whatever, and passion very, very highly. When you say humility, I, with a young person, I don't want them coming in. I don't need all their ideas. I do think when you're hiring experienced people, like I don't really mind an ego. Like if you're bringing something to the table and whatever we're going to do, you're going to help us print money, you're going to help us succeed. Like you got to deal with some egos. So humility, there's a difference of like treating people well and like assholes and people being, treating whoever that are lower than them on the totem pole especially if you're in an office setting, you get a pretty good feel for that. Um, that would be something I wouldn't want to deal with if it's just a bad guy or girl. But humility to me is not as big a deal. But I would just say hunger, passion, um, willingness to do whatever. And let's face it, some people are just they just produce. It's my favorite part about like the business world. Some people just produce more than others, and we all can figure it out pretty quickly who those individuals are in whatever field we're in. Some people are cash cows. Some people are bring a lot of added value to whatever you're doing, and it's hard. I mean, it's no different than scouting. It's no different than hiring people. You're just taking an educated guess, and you can call a million people to get recommendations. You never really know until you start working with them. I was driving around yesterday listening to Brian Callahan talk, and he's like, "Listen, I've been around my dad, obviously 18 years growing up. He's one of the closest people to my life, but I've never worked uh, with my father until this year, right? So, Bill Callahan, he's like, this was the first year we'd ever worked together. So there is like, yeah, we know each other really well. He's my father, but like as the play caller on game day, we had to figure out how to work with each other. I also think there is, so much value in, you know, being around the other person. Uh, for those of you that have work in office settings, that there's just a value there that cannot be disputed. It's much easier to be productive with ideas, to figure out, if you have people working under you, how good or bad they are. That's something I miss dearly, to be honest with you. Love the podcast. Question: what do you think the Bears should do with the 10th pick? I personally think the Bears should be aggressive and move up to get Abdul Carter. Otherwise, I think they should draft Tyler Warren or Genty. I think drafting a running back 10th overall is nuts. I think that's pretty crazy. I really do. Um, I people think I'm a hater on the guy. He's an excellent player. I just in a draft where you can get a running back in the second or third round, I would take a defensive lineman. Look who you're playing. Great offenses, right? You have to assume the Bears are going to be much better on offense. You got to assume the Lions are going to be explosive and they got sweet players everywhere. And Minnesota has incredible players and a rookie quarterback. I would want to hit the quarterback as many times as I could. And if they're a defensive lineman, like you said, Abdul Carter would be awesome. You're not going to get him unless he has major medical issues and he falls. But he's going two or three. And I would not trade up to two or three. I would just take whoever, Jalen Walker, whoever the best defensive lineman is on the board. That's probably what I would do if I was the Bears. I think the thing with Tyler Warren is he obviously is his size is pretty special. I mean, he's huge. Let me get his exact measurements here. Tyler Warren. Uh, so he was 6'5" and a half, 260 pounds. I mean, he's massive. He's not the twitchiest guy. And from a change of direction fluidity, I mean, he's not Kelsey, Mark Andrews, Kittle. He's really just a kind of a jump ball. He's got great ball skills. He's a good player. I've talked to some people in the NFL that think the way he's talked about is a little strong. I would say in a good draft, a guy like him goes in like the 20s. 10 would be, there'd be a lot of pressure on him to become a good player. You take a tight end at 10, he better be a Pro Bowler because you're paying him a lot of money immediately. Uh, Question for the mailbag. Heard your topic about Hurts versus Herbert, and I think it's a very unique situation when you compare them fairly easily because they've shared two coordinators. Herbert with Shane Steichen went 4,300 yards, 31 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. And Jalen went 3,700 yards, 22 touchdowns, six picks. And with Kellen Moore, Herbert went 20 and 7, Jalen went 18 and 5. They both missed some time. Why do you think people discount Herbert's situation and weapons he's had in his career? With the exception of Ladd McConkey, the only weapon not a Rivers leftover is Quentin Johnson. Herbert with A.J. Brown and Devontae would cook. I agree. The only people that hate on Herbert are people on the internet. Like you won't find people in the internet, or excuse me, the NFL, executives, coaches that talk poorly about the guy. He's a really good, talented player. Is he perfect? No. Is he better than the top guys? No. Would like 85, 90% of the league take him immediately? 100%. Also comparing, like, he doesn't play. Who cares? Like, he has to beat Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud, Patrick Mahomes. Like, those are, he doesn't, Jalen's in a different conference. Comparing him to Jalen's stupid. Jalen's comps are the NFC guys. Jaden, Purdy, Dak, Jared Goff, Jordan Love. Like that's who he has to worry about. The NFC is a different. It's like a different neighborhood. The AFC is like the richest neighborhood in the entire state. It doesn't get any better. You got all these guys that are going right to the Hall of Fame, especially the top three. The NFC is like, yeah, I mean, a couple years ago, people thought Jared Goff sucked. Jalen Hurts has been more than up for debate over the last couple years. Purdy's the number one debated quarterback going right now. Most people think that Dak Prescott's the most overpaid quarterback in the history of the NFL. He's gotten two max contracts. Jordan Love. I like him. Okay. But, I mean, maybe I won't by the end of next season. NFC's got a lot of question marks. Derek Carr's and Bryce Young's. I mean, Baker. I forget about him. It's not exactly, Favre, Young, and Aikman. Let's pretend you and I are on Shark Tank. You are one of the sharks. I'm an entrepreneur pitching you a company to invest in. My best friends from college and I are building a sports betting app for the App Store that offers a safer and more social alternative to traditional house betting. We are calling it League Bet. It's a tournament style, skill based sports betting app where players participate by joining a public or private league, enrolling in low cost buy in, which converts to high ratio virtual bankroll. And you compete head to head against their peers with the goal of being the top performing sports bettor. The player with the most correct sports bets with the league requirements wins the prize pool. Our target audience is college students, 21 plus, workplace environments, athletes, and traditional sports wagers at casinos. As a frequent sports bettor yourself, what do you think about the concept? And would you use it? Well, I would be considered, like most people that gamble, a traditionalist. I like betting $100 on Joel Damon 9-1 to top 10 in the Valero. I like betting on a three-team parlay in the Sweet 16 for teams to make the Final Four. I like getting 9-1 odds on Arkansas to make the Final Four and putting $100 on them. Like I just like me against the game. So I'm not a big fantasy football guy. So I've never been a part like where everyone buys in for $50, $100. I mean, I've had friends that buy in for four figures, like have these huge leagues where the winner gets 10,000 or, you read these stories about like the celebrities, enormous cash prizes. So clearly there's some intrigue in that. But like when my friends or people in my life text about gambling, we text about who we should bet on. Like, do you like the Chiefs as an underdog against the Bills in the second round? Do you like, you know, USC is getting 10 points at Notre Dame? Like, I don't know. So I've never bet, beside when I play golf, against other individuals. I bet against a team or in golf on a player. And I've been doing that, for 15 plus years since college, really. But I just, my gambling habits as a sports better would never lean to that. Now, I can't speak if you're 20 years old. And listen, there's something like in college betting someone 50 bucks when your team's playing their team. Totally. I mean, I'm not acting like I've never done something like that, but as a consistent gambler, I like gambling on the game more than I do against other individuals. So like there's a reason that, the DraftKings sponsorship that we have works so well for me personally. One, I invested in the company in my brokerage account. Two, I gamble heavily on sports, uh, just because I like to. I mean, I've gambled probably put 7, 8 bets on the March Madness, and I don't even watch college basketball, but I'm a fucking American and I like to gamble. And it's like, I got to have a little action on this, and it's fun. But it also, for me, and we're all different, like when I put $100 on Arkansas to make the Final Four, I was on the edge of my seat watching Arkansas play Texas Tech. And while they lost, and I didn't even get the opportunity to see that bet through one more game, that $100 was worth the price. It was like I was at the game. It was incredible for me. I get highs from entertainment. I've been watching sports for so long that beside football, which is extremely intriguing to me because I'm going to do podcast topics off of it. So I do this for a living, but it's just I'm always thinking like, how can I make something interesting off what Mike Vrabel just said or what the 49ers just did? A lot of, especially when it comes to basketball or baseball or even the hockey playoffs, like, listen, I do want to pay attention to the NBA playoffs. Well, it's much easier if I place a couple bets on teams to win like the Western and Eastern Conference. So I like gambling from an entertainment standpoint because I don't care. I do not care who wins. I have no horse in the race when it came to March Madness. I didn't give a shit who won beside the teams that I bet on. So that's how I gamble when it comes to sports. Is I gamble less to like, oh, I beat my buddy, and more like I just won money. It's honestly one of the last things in my life that kind of gets my juices flowing. Like I would not having just one. I think I put 150 bucks on Arkansas. Would have paid like $1,500. It was riveting. I still can't believe they blew it, but it's like that's how I get my entertainment. And as you get older, like I don't, not many things entertain me anymore.